one waitress, one arrogant millionaire, and one grand piano tucked into the corner of an upscale restaurant in Atlanta. What started as a simple dinner service spiraled into a public showdown, a moment that silenced an entire room and shattered one man's ego in front of dozens of witnesses. The air inside the marquette buzzed with quiet conversations and the soft clinking of silverware. Every table seemed wrapped in its own little world, except for one. A corner table soon to become the center of attention. Maya Bennett, a 25-year-old waitress with steady hands and tired eyes, moved from table to table with practiced grace. To most people dining there that night, she was invisible, a background figure meant to refill water glasses and disappear just as quickly, but not to Derek Whitmore, known throughout Atlanta's business scene as a ruthless entrepreneur with more money than empathy. Derek walked into the restaurant with his entourage like he owned the place. Loud, laughing, and eager for attention, he thrived on spectacle, and tonight, he was looking for a new target. His gaze locked onto Maya, not because of her uniform or her service, but because of something else, a quiet resilience in her posture that seemed to irritate him more than it should. It started with small comments, the kind that sound like jokes but sting like insults. One by one, they escalated until the entire room could sense something brewing. Patrons at nearby tables slowed their conversations, their eyes drifting toward the unfolding tension like moths to a flame. By the time Derek issued his final challenge, Maya stood frozen between a tray of drinks and a growing wall of humiliation. With a smirk that could cut glass, Derek leaned back in his chair, raised his voice loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear, and dared her to sit at the piano, right then and there, and prove she was more than just a waitress. The room fell silent. Silverware paused midair. Conversations died mid-sentence. Everyone waited for her next move. And in that moment, one thing became painfully clear. This night would end with either Maya's complete humiliation or with a performance no one would ever forget. Long before Maya Bennett carried trays across crowded dining rooms, she carried dreams that felt too big for the small South Carolina town where she grew up. Her earliest memories were not of cartoons or playgrounds, but of her mother's old record players spinning vinyl classics late into the night. Nina Simone, Ray Charles, and Aretha Franklin filled their modest home with sounds that stretched far beyond the peeling paint on their walls. Money had always been tight. Maya's mother, a single parent and full-time nurse, worked double shifts at the local hospital just to keep the lights on. There were nights when dinner meant peanut butter sandwiches and tap water. Yet through every hardship, music remained their sanctuary. An out-of-tune upright piano stood like a tired soldier in the corner of their living room. A neighbor, moving to a smaller apartment, had gifted it to them one summer. The keys stuck in places, and the wood bore scratches from years of use. But none of that mattered to Maya. At first, she would press the keys one at a time, fascinated by the sounds they made. Soon, she was mimicking the melodies from her mother's favorite records. Without formal lessons or expensive sheet music, Maya taught herself to play by ear. Hours slipped by unnoticed as she practiced, her fingers dancing over the worn keys with growing confidence. By middle school, she had become the unofficial pianist for every community event, school assembly, and Sunday service at their local church. Neighbors often stopped by just to listen from the porch as her music drifted into the warm evening air. People told her she had talent. Some even said she had a gift. When high school ended, Maya applied to every music program she could find, her heart set on attending the Atlanta School of Music. Acceptance letters came, but scholarships did not. The numbers never added up. Tuition, rent, books. It all towered over her like an impossible wall. By the time she turned 18, reality left her with a choice: chase a dream she could not afford, or find a job that paid enough to keep her family afloat. Maya packed away her college acceptance letters and started waiting tables at a diner just off the highway. Atlanta eventually called to her like unfinished business. 2 years ago, she moved to the city with little more than a suitcase, a keyboard she bought secondhand, and a belief that she would somehow find her way back to music. That belief led her to the Marquette, an upscale restaurant with linen tablecloths, crystal chandeliers, and most importantly, a grand piano tucked into the corner of the dining room. It stood there like a relic from another era, gleaming under the soft glow of pendant lights. Maya noticed it the day she applied for the job, during her interview, while answering questions about customer service and multitasking. Her eyes kept drifting toward the piano. She told herself she was there for the paycheck, but deep down, that piano mattered more than she would ever admit. Most nights, she walked past it on her way to the kitchen, stealing glances like secret glimmers of hope. On rare occasions, when the dining room emptied out and her manager stepped outside for a smoke break, she would sneak over, lift the lid, and let her fingers brush the keys. It did not sound like her old upright back home. The notes here were richer, deeper, almost alive. The kitchen staff caught her once or twice. A few of her co-workers knew about her hidden talent, but none had heard her play a full song. Music remained her private world, a place untouched by overdue bills, difficult customers, and the aching muscles that came with 8-hour shifts on her feet. She told herself that someday, when the time was right, she would find her way back to performing. Until then, Maya became the dependable waitress with a ready smile and tired eyes. The one who covered extra shifts when coworkers called out. The one who stayed late to clean up after large parties. Customers never asked about her life outside the restaurant. To them, she existed only in the moments she appeared at their table, pen in hand, ready to take their order. But on that Friday night, when Derek Whitmore walked in with his expensive watch and louder-than-life laugh, something shifted. She did not know it yet, but the invisible line she had drawn between her work life and her music was about to be erased. With every glance Derek threw her way, with every calculated insult wrapped in charm, he inched her closer to a choice she had been avoiding for years. Before the night ended, Maya would have to decide whether to shrink under the weight of humiliation or let the music she had buried for so long finally speak for itself. The evening rush had just started to slow when the front doors of the Marquette swung open with a sudden burst of cold air and louder than usual conversation. Every head at the front of the dining room turned, some out of curiosity, others out of habit. Regular patrons knew that kind of entrance only meant one thing. Derek Whitmore had arrived, flanked by two well-dressed business associates and a woman wearing a designer dress that sparkled under the chandelier light. Derek walked in as if the restaurant existed for his amusement alone. Staff members stiffened at the sight of him. Servers exchanged quick glances, already dreading whose section he would land in tonight. Derek had a reputation that stretched beyond the walls of the Marquette. In the world of Atlanta's elite, he was known as a man who built companies with ruthless efficiency and tore down people with equal skill. Loud, opinionated, and dangerously charming, he relished any opportunity to become the center of attention. Maya stood near the bar, wiping down a tray, when she heard her manager's voice call out her name. Table 7. That's yours. Her heart sank before she even turned around. One look at Derek settling into the leather booth confirmed it. There was no option to switch tables. No room to ask for help. It was her responsibility now. Carrying herself with professional calm, Maya approached the table with a practiced smile. Good evening. Welcome to the Marquette. Can I start you off with drinks? Derek barely glanced at the menu. Top shelf scotch, he said without missing a beat. His tone carried the lazy authority of a man used to getting exactly what he wanted. His companions followed his lead, placing their drink orders with half interest. But Derek's attention had already shifted, right back to Maya. As she walked away to submit the order, she felt it, his gaze following her every step. That it was not curiosity. It was calculation. When Maya returned with the drinks, Derek wasted no time starting his favorite sport, verbal sparring with people who could not afford to push back. Tell me something, he said, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. How does someone like you end up here? This job does not exactly scream lifelong ambition, does it? The words hung in the air long enough for his table to chuckle politely. Maya placed the drinks down with steady hands. I am just happy to help you enjoy your evening, sir, she replied, her voice neutral. But Derek was not done. Come on now, Maya, he said, glancing at her name tag as though discovering it for the first time. Surely you have bigger dreams than carrying plates and smiling on cue. The use of her name felt intentional, almost invasive, a spotlight she never asked for. Maya forced a small smile and moved on to take their food order, hoping the moment would pass. But Derek had already found his entertainment for the night, and he was not letting go. As she cleared nearby tables, she overheard him holding court with his companions. His voice rose louder than necessary, weaving stories of his business conquests, his investments, and thinly veiled insults about people who, as he put it, never found the ambition to do more with their lives. The table laughed on cue, but Maya could sense the discomfort in nearby diners. Conversations at surrounding tables quieted as eyes began drifting toward Derek's corner booth, and toward her by the time appetizers arrived. Derek turned his attention back to her with renewed interest. "So, Maya," he said, resting his elbow on the table and locking eyes with her. "What do you do when you are not running food to ungrateful people like me? Tell me you have some hidden talent. A hobby. Something worth talking about." Her heart skipped. For a moment, she considered brushing it off, keeping it professional. But something about the way he asked, the lingering dare behind his words, pushed her to answer. "I play piano," she said quietly, placing a basket of bread on the table. That single sentence changed everything. That Derek's eyes lit up like he had just been handed a new toy. "A pianist?" he repeated, loud enough for two nearby tables to hear. "Now that is interesting." Maya's stomach tightened. "Tell me," he continued, his voice dropping to a playful but cutting tone. "Are you any good? Or just another person with big dreams and no follow-through?" Before she could answer, Derek leaned back in his seat and pointed toward the restaurant's grand piano, sitting untouched in the corner. "Why do not you give us a little performance?" The air shifted. Conversation stopped. Chairs turned. For the first time all night, the Marquette's focus landed squarely on Maya, and as she stood there, caught between her tray and her pride, one thing became terrifyingly clear. This was no longer just dinner service. This was becoming a public spectacle, one she never asked for. The soft glow of the chandeliers seemed dimmer now. Or maybe it was just Maya's vision narrowing as the pressure built around her. Derek Whitmore sat, with a smirk that stretched wider with every passing second. His gaze never left her. The people at his table leaned in, waiting for her reaction like audience members at a show they had not paid for. Derek lifted his glass and spoke again, louder this time so more tables could hear. "There is a piano. Right there, Maya," he said, pointing casually toward the grand instrument in the corner. "This is your moment. Let us see what all that hidden talent looks like under real pressure." A few nearby diners turned their heads. Whispered conversations started to ripple through the room. Some guests glanced at Maya with curiosity. Others, with pity. Her throat tightened. She forced out a nervous laugh, trying to make the situation feel smaller than it was. "I really should not," she said softly. "I am just here to work tonight." Derek leaned back in his chair, pretending to look disappointed. "Oh, come on," he said, waving his hand like brushing away an excuse. "Where is the fun in that? Surely a future star is not afraid of a little audience." The laughter at his table grew louder. Maya's hands trembled at her sides. Every instinct told her to walk away, to focus on her job, and let the moment pass. But it did not pass. Derek was enjoying himself too much to let it go. "Maybe I was wrong about you," he said with mock sadness, shaking his head. "Maybe you talk a big game, but when it is time to deliver." He let the sentence trail off, leaving space for the insult to fill the air. Her heart pounded harder. Maya's gaze drifted toward the piano. It stood quietly in the corner, untouched, and waiting. A wave of childhood memories rushed forward without warning. The late nights practicing in her living room. Her mother sitting nearby with tired eyes, but always listening. The school recitals where shaky hands became steady the moment she played the first note. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, words repeated over the years during every tough moment. "Never let anyone make you feel small, Maya. You are bigger than they will ever understand." The sounds of the restaurant faded. For a brief second, it felt like she was standing in that old living room again, fingers hovering above worn piano keys. The same mix of fear and hope swirling inside her. Her co-workers stood frozen at their stations, exchanging glances but saying nothing. Even her manager, usually quick to shut down guest misbehavior, stayed near the bar, unsure how to intervene without making things worse. The weight of the room pressed against her chest. More guests began to notice. Forks paused midair. Conversation stalled. Eyes locked onto her. It was no longer just Derek's table. The entire dining room now watched in silence. Waiting to see what she would do next, Maya opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Her stomach twisted. The fear of failing, of hitting the wrong notes or freezing in front of everyone, felt overwhelming. But another fear followed quickly behind it, the fear of walking away, of letting Derek's smirk become the lasting memory of this night. Her mother's words came again, clearer this time. "You are bigger than this moment, Maya. You decide what happens next." She took a slow, shaky breath. Her eyes moved from Derek to the piano, then back again. The room waited, suspended in silence, like a held breath before a storm. And in that fragile pause, Maya felt the question pressing down harder than ever. Would she take the risk, or would she let fear win? Maya stood frozen for one last breath, then slowly lifted her chin. Her voice came out low but steady. "Fine," she said. "I will play." A small gasp swept across the dining room. Conversations stopped completely. Forks rested on plates. Wine glasses stayed midair. Derek leaned back in his chair with an almost lazy grin, like a king waiting for entertainment. His companions chuckled under their breath. Still expecting a disaster, Maya's legs felt like stone as she placed her tray on the nearest table. With every step toward the grand piano, the weight in her chest grew heavier. The soft tap of her shoes against the hardwood floor echoed louder than it should have. The chandelier light fell on her like a spotlight, isolating her from the rest of the room. Every eye followed her. Some faces showed curiosity. Others showed doubt. But none of them mattered more than the man at table 7. Derek sat with his hands clasped, already sure this was going to be another story he would laugh about later. Maya reached the piano and stood there for a moment, staring at the polished black surface. Her reflection stared back, nervous eyes, tense shoulders, lips pressed into a thin line. Her heart pounded so loud she wondered if others could hear it too. She pulled out the bench and sat down slowly. Her hands hovered over the keys, trembling so badly she had to clench them into fists just to regain control. Closing her eyes, she took a deep breath. In her mind, she saw her mother again, standing in their small living room, swaying gently. As Maya played for her after long hospital shifts, she saw the old upright piano with chipped keys, the secondhand music books with pages folded and worn. She remembered staying up late, practicing while her siblings slept, pushing herself to learn new songs because it was the only time the house felt quiet enough for music. Her breath steadied her. Fingers settled lightly on the keys. The first notes came out soft, fragile, like they might break under their own weight. Someone coughed at a nearby table. A chair scraped. Derek's laughter floated faintly in the background, but Maya shut it all out. She focused on the melody she knew best, Claire de Lune, the piece that had comforted her through more hard days than she could count. The notes began to build, each one reaching farther, stronger. Her fingers found their rhythm. The music filled the air, drifting through the restaurant like a slow, rising wave. Conversations that had started again fell silent one by one. Silverware clinked and then stopped. Even Derek's laughter died mid-sentence. Eyes widened. Mouths hung slightly open. For the first time all night, the only sound in the marquette was Maya's music. Her hands moved faster now, more confident. Her body swaying with the flow of the melody. Her heart poured into every note. The frustration of years waiting tables, the exhaustion of balancing rent and survival, the late-night tears after long shifts. The whispered encouragement from her mother telling her to never give up. Each key she pressed felt like releasing a piece of her story. Sorrow, hope, anger, pride, all stitched together into a song that spoke louder than words ever could. The air thickened with emotion. Some diners sat with hands resting on their chests. Others blinked back unexpected tears. Even Derek, the man who had turned her into a joke just moments earlier, sat still and silent. His smirk was gone. His companions no longer smiled. Maya did not look at him. She did not need to. Her focus stayed on the keys, on the music, on herself. As the final chord rang out and faded, the room remained frozen in place. There was a brief, suspended second where no one moved. No one spoke. Then, like a dam breaking, the restaurant exploded with applause. People stood from their seats. Some clapped with both hands high above their heads. Others whistled and cheered. Maya sat at the piano, breathless, her fingers still resting on the keys, her heart racing faster than ever. Tears blurred her vision, but this time they were not from fear. They were from release, from pride, from the knowledge that tonight she had reclaimed something Derek could never take away from her. Her voice, her talent, her worth. The applause filled every corner of the restaurant. Maya stayed seated for a few moments longer, her hands resting on the keys, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. She turned her head slightly and saw people standing, clapping, and even cheering. Faces that had looked through her earlier were now lit with genuine admiration. But one face stood out. Derek Whitmore remained seated. His once relaxed posture now seemed stiff, his shoulders tense. After a long, awkward pause, he lifted his hands and gave a slow, almost forced clap. The sound was flat, hollow, and half-hearted. Compared to the roaring applause around him, Maya caught his eyes for just a second. The smirk he wore so confidently all evening was gone. In its place sat something else, something caught between surprise, discomfort, and bruised pride. She stood up slowly, her legs still shaky but her back straight. The room began to settle. As people returned to their seats, though many kept glancing her way, whispering to each other about what they had just witnessed, Maya stepped down from the piano platform and began walking back to her station. Along the way, diners stopped her. "You were amazing," said an older woman near the window. "Absolutely beautiful," added another guest. Placing a hand over her heart, one man leaned over from his table and said softly, "You should be on a stage, not carrying trays." Maya smiled at each person, offering a quiet thank you. Their words felt like sunlight breaking through after a long storm. Her co-workers, who had been watching everything from a distance, exchanged quick smiles and subtle nods in her direction. Even her manager gave her a small, approving glance from behind the bar. The air inside the Marquette felt completely different now. Where there had been judgment and mockery, there was now respect. Where there had been silence and awkward laughter, there was now quiet admiration. Maya felt it inside her too. Something had shifted, not just in the room, but deep within herself. She had walked into work that night feeling invisible. Now, she felt seen. As she returned to Derek's table to deliver the check, the air between them grew thick with unspoken tension. Derek tapped his fingers against the table for a moment, avoiding her gaze. When he finally spoke, his voice was clipped and low. "Well, you made your point," he said, forcing a small, tight smile. "No need to rub it in." Maya paused, setting the bill down carefully in front of him. Then she met his eyes, calm, steady, and clear. "It was never about proving anything to you," she said. Her tone was soft but firm. "I just wanted to play." For the first time all night, Derek had no comeback. He shifted in his seat, looking down at the check, suddenly very interested in signing it. Quickly, one of his companions, a younger man, who had stayed mostly quiet all evening, looked up at Maya with genuine sincerity. "You were incredible," he said, his voice low but heartfelt. "Truly." The comment caught her off guard, but she nodded with a small, grateful smile before stepping away. Maya continued her shift, clearing plates and refilling glasses, but everything felt different. Her steps felt lighter. Her movements carried more certainty. The people who once barely noticed her presence now followed her with their eyes, as though witnessing someone entirely new. But to the far end of the room, Derek and his group gathered their things and left. There was no dramatic exit, no loud jokes, no attention-seeking laughs, just a quiet, uncomfortable retreat. Maya watched them go but felt no bitterness and no anger, only peace. Tonight, she had stood up, not with arguments, not with harsh words, but with the very thing she loved most, her music, and that was more powerful than anything Derek Whitmore could have said or done. As the night at the Marquette slowly came to an end, Maya returned to her routine, clearing tables and resetting place settings, but something felt different. Her tip jar filled faster than usual. Diners who rarely left more than a few dollars were now tucking in crisp bills, some with short notes scribbled on napkins. "Thank you for the music," one note read. Another simply said, "Do not stop playing." Maya's heart swelled with quiet gratitude. Her co-workers approached her with soft smiles and pats on the shoulder. The kitchen staff peeked out from behind the service doors, offering thumbs up and playful grins for the first time in a long while. Maya did not feel like just a waitress passing through the room unnoticed on her way back to the counter. She noticed a business card resting at the edge of table 12. Curious, she picked it up. Her breath caught when she read the name. Jonathan Reeves, music producer, Chicago Recording Studios. Written below in neat handwriting was a short message. Call me. I want to hear more. Maya stood there for a moment, staring at the card. Her fingers trembled, but this time it was not from fear. It was from hope. She slipped the card carefully into her apron pocket, holding it close like a small treasure. Later that night, after her shift ended and the restaurant lights dimmed, Maya walked home through the cool city air. Her apartment was small, the walls thin, and the furniture secondhand. But in the corner stood her old upright piano, the same one with the chipped keys and faded finish. She sat on the worn bench and placed her hands gently on the keys. The sound that filled the room was soft, a little uneven, but it was hers as she played. Memories of the night flooded back. The weight of Derek's stare, the fear in her chest, the sudden release when the first notes filled the air, and the applause that followed. Maya smiled to herself. The fear, the doubt, the years of telling herself she was not enough, all of it felt smaller now. Her music had spoken louder than anything Derek Whitmore could have said, and for the first time in a long while, her dreams felt close enough to touch anyone watching her story unfold. Her message was clear. Never let someone else define your worth. Your voice matters. Your dream matters. And as Maya closed the piano lid for the night, she felt something new blooming inside her. Possibility. If Maya's story inspired you, make sure to subscribe for more stories of resilience, courage, and unexpected triumph. Your story could be next.